Good morning, everyone. My name is Jess Swart. I am the founder of J Swart Behavior Consulting, and I'm here live a little bit late because of some technical issues. I was hoping to be all set up and be able to share some resources with you today while going live. However, the technology failed me. However, I'm very grateful for this tech in general because it means I can chat to all of you and have some resources anyway for afterwards. So today I really wanted to focus on executive functioning. I'm going to talk a little bit about what executive functioning is and then how you as a parent can support your child to improve their executive functioning skills. That means I'm going to refer to my screen a little bit today to make sure I go through everything that I want to cover. So we will just do some repositioning so that we can make this happen. There we go. All right. Wonderful. So because I'm on my phone here, I'm going to make sure that I can see our chat. All right. We will continue on. Excuse me. So let's get started. If you are on live or you jump on at some point in time, feel free to post a question and I should be able to see it here and I will do my best to answer that live today. But let's get started. So I guess before I jump into things too quickly, I want to share that I provide face-to-face services in the local area within Canada where I live, but I also am growing my online remote services. So this means I have a range of resources and online courses that are available. I am about to launch my Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap. This is my mini course and it turned into a little bit more than a mini course. It ended up being 3 hours of content, but it is still like a lot of the basic foundational information that really helps you understand your child, connect with your child, and help them learn the skills they need to reduce the behaviors of concern that you might be seeing. It's not all about just changing the environment so that they can cope. It's about doing that as well as increasing their capacity and their skills in order to cope with these situations. I'm a strong believer in, making things easier for our kids initially so that they can learn and be successful, but then also teaching them the coping skills because we can't always change every environment we go into. We can't always make other people change. It's not always possible. So we want our kids to have the capacity to cope, to communicate, to express themselves, to adjust for themselves, maybe to remove themselves from an environment if it becomes too much. And this enables our kids to engage in the world that we experience and that we have in front of us. So in saying that, my course is going to be live soon. It includes 3 hours worth of pre-recorded content where I go through various strategies, understanding your child, actionable steps that you can take. I have a worksheet that's paired with this training so that you can go step by step through the training and take time to pause and reflect on what I've talked about and then write down what is relevant for your child so you can come out at the end with a plan that you can put in place. A lot of the things I go through in this mini course are strategies that you can apply right then and there. So you can finish one of the little pre-recorded sessions. I've broken it down into kind of 10 to 15 minute videos, so it's really digestible. You can watch them as you need, listen to them as you need, and then you can go and apply straight away some of the tools and strategies that that I go through and that are relevant for your child. There's lots of different examples and suggestions, so you can determine what is applicable to your child. Okay, let's move on. So I'm going to pause. Excellent. All right. We're going to talk about executive functioning. So firstly, what is executive functioning? Executive functioning really is our brain's ability to plan and process information, and it does connect to our emotional regulation as well. So it involves a huge spectrum of skills and capacities and abilities. It really enables us to function in our everyday life. When our executive functioning reduces, so people who might have acquired brain injury and other brain conditions, really their capacity to like process information, to plan what they're going to do, to regulate their emotions, to have impulse control, it's really reduced. And so we see this change quite significantly from people who had good executive functioning skills, good brain capacity, and then have a brain injury, and you can really see that reduction of capacity there. Now, it doesn't mean we can't build it, we can't increase it. It just means that it does impact our capacity to function and process information on a daily perspective. You might see this in your child when perhaps you feel like they're not listening to you. It might seem that they have that they're being lazy or they're unmotivated. It might seem like that. Sorry, it definitely doesn't mean that that's exactly what's happening. It just, the capacity for them to process the information in their prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of your brain, is a little, challenged. It's a bit delayed, or there's competing information there, right? There's maybe competing sensory information that's blocking their ability to process that information and retain it in their frontal cortex. So it might seem they're lazy or not listening, but they're not intentionally doing this, right? It might be that they're overwhelmed by small changes or small things that happen that aren't within what they thought was going to occur. You might see it when you're having to constantly remind them. So you're like, please put your socks on. And 5 minutes later, they're in their bedroom playing with their Lego. And you're like, I told you 5 minutes ago to put your socks on. We're going to school. And so they go downstairs to put their socks on. But then 2 minutes later, you see them playing with, fiddling with a little paper plane or something, right? And so they're just getting distracted in those moments. And even though you've reminded them, their attention is pulled other ways. This could be attention-based, it could be a sensory-based situation. So it might be that there's competing sensory stimulation coming in, and that is preventing them from completing the task that they've been asked to do. So you might find you're repeating yourself over and over again, and you're getting frustrated and irritated, and you're starting to yell and feel really irritated by your child's inability to complete a simple task, such as putting their socks on before going to school. If this is you, then your child likely has some struggles with executive functioning. And for children with autism, this is a very common situation. And it doesn't mean they can't develop the skill. It just means they need to learn it in a different way. They need more practice. They need more opportunities to be successful instead of being kind of shut down all the time and not being able to do these things. All right. So I want to clarify that this is not your child being intentionally difficult. They're not intentionally trying to frustrate or annoy you. It's the process in their brain that is tricky for them to manage and to follow through with. If you are neurodiverse yourself as a parent, you will know what this feels like, right? You will know that you're trying to do something and you get distracted, or there are so many competing priorities and information that you need to attend to that it's hard to stay focused. If you're not neurodiverse, then I want you to think about a situation where you're perhaps at a really busy environment. So think about maybe you're at a music concert and there's people everywhere, and think about a scenario where you're already tired and you're in a busy environment. It's noisy, right? There's lots of commotion going on. It's hot, so you're a bit flustered, right? You're in this hot, busy, noisy environment, and someone is asking you a question and wants you to have a conversation about neuroscience, right? Maybe they ask you a really complicated, or they ask you a math question, like a technical, high-level math question, or they ask you about what your opinion is on the exploration of Mars and the technicality of this. Think about how you might be able to process that information. Think about the fact that you're going to try to yell this, your opinion or your thoughts or the answers to the other person, and how hard this might be. This is potentially what your child is experiencing in a typical daily environment when you're asking them to do things, right? There's all this noise, there's this competing sensory information, and they're trying to keep things together, but it's really hard and it's overwhelming and it's high effort, right? It's a lot of energy being used. But the important thing is that the more we practice, the easier things become. So let's get into talking about a few strategies and tools that we can use to help our children's executive functioning. Actually, before I get into that, I want to just clarify some of the key things that are difficult for individuals who have executive functioning challenges. So things like getting started, okay? You might know what you have to do, but just getting started is really difficult. That's all because there's all these distractions around. Working memory. Now, working memory is our ability to process multiple parts of information at the same time and retain it and use it. So it's your ability to remember information. So a multiple step instruction but might be really difficult for someone who has a low working memory. They might find it hard to retain information and process that information. So it might be a child who has to complete a homework task, and the teacher has told them to do, to first read the instruction, to write their name, to then answer the questions, and when they're done, bring it to them to get the teacher to check it. So all of those steps might seem very simple and straightforward to us, but for our kids, that's a lot of information, and they find it hard to use their memory to recall that information and to understand the steps and execute. Planning and organization, so being able to put lots of information in order and step by step, to know what goes first, to know what goes next, to know that, okay, I'm going to school. What do I need to put in my bag to get myself ready for school? What do I need to remember that I have? Do I have gym class? Do I have library? Do I need to pack my library? Do I have a special event that I need to pack special equipment for, or things I've prepared at home? So being able to plan and process and organize that information. Attention and impulse control. So being able to attend, sustain attention, and control those impulses that we might be inclined to to engage in, right? So reacting to certain things, being able to control that, it can be really difficult for our kids. Flexible thinking, so being able to transition from one thing to a next, to adjust to changes that occur, to go with the flow a little bit, right? To adjust to those changes in a calm and controlled way as opposed to being reactive. And that links to emotional regulation, being able to control our emotions or to sit with our emotions and know they're going to change and to get through those tough emotions as opposed to trying to change them. And self-monitoring, so being able to be aware of ourselves, for your children to be able to be aware of themselves and what they're doing, how they're doing it, having that self-reflection to adjust what they're doing. That can be really hard. Even lots of adults struggle with this. So monitoring yourself is a lifelong skill that takes time to learn. All right. So I'd like to remind you that these are complex skills and processes. So there are factors that make it even harder for our kids to complete these tasks and skills. Things like being tired, being hungry, being anxious about something. So having that worry, that fear that something's going to happen, or I don't want a bug to fly in my face because that's going to make things even worse. Having sensory overload, I've already talked a lot about that. Being rushed, potentially, that pressure, right? And being expected to process a lot of information and a lot of language at once. So these things could exacerbate our children's challenge with executive functioning. Okay, remember, it's all about the brain overload, the capacity of the brain to process information. When we're talking about executive functioning, I want you to think about the brain and executive functioning as a flight conductor. Sorry, what's it called? My executive functioning is letting me down right now. That's why I have notes. One strategy that we can use is get our children to have notes, right? We use these things all the time. So it's like a air controller, right? Where they're having to get information from all these different planes that are coming to land. They need to know who is where. They need to be able to direct the airplanes or direct the air traffic that's coming in, that's landing, that's taking off. They need to have a number of processes in place. So if there's an emergency, they follow a step-by-step process. They need to know need to be able to listen to communication and respond to that in the way based on what is happening within the environment. So there are all these different factors that they have to manage and organize based on different conditions and different situations. And they need to do it very quickly and efficiently in the moment and adjust in the moment based on what is going on. So this is what our kids' brains are having to do. This is what our brains do all the time, and it's very automated. However, you would have learned some of these skills as a kid and as an adult and have embedded certain habits and practices. Our children are still learning, so they need to learn what works for them, and they need strategies and tools to put in place to be effective. So let's go through some of these things that we can do. Okay. Firstly, you want to use some supports. Initially, to help build our children's capacity, it's important to put some additional supports in place so they can be successful. Then remember, over time, we want to try to fade these out if needed. Some of our kids might need some level of support all the time, but we want them to learn to use those supports independently. I use alarms all the time because I don't have the capacity in my brain to remember all the things that I have to do. So I use a tool such as alarms. I have a calendar. I have everything in my calendar so that I remember all the different things I need to do. These are tools that I use on a daily basis to function effectively. It doesn't mean I don't have the capacity to function, but it means that I am using them so that I can use my brain function for other purposes, and I'm managing my energy, right? I'm managing my cognitive energy so I can put that in the place that is most important. And that's usually working with families and working on the fly and problem solving on the fly. So think about visual schedules. Can you write a list? Can you draw some pictures down to help your child work through a sequence? Maybe you're writing a list. Maybe you're getting them to write a list. You can use checklists where they check off certain things or cross them off. You can put images on the back of your door or little sticky notes, right? And they take them off and move them to a different wall once they've completed those things or once they've checked them off their list. So think about visuals, schedules, written lists that you can use. Think about where you can put them. Sometimes I have parents put images or sticky notes in their bathroom. If it's like brush teeth, brush hair, it might be those two simple things and they put the sticky notes down once they're done. It might be that the sticky notes stay there and just those written reminders are enough for your child to do it independently. I want you to think about breaking the skill down. So break it down. That's my mantra for today. Break it down. Think of the skill, think of the situation and the skill, that your child has difficulty with. Think about how do you break it down to make it easier, and then work on one step. So where is your child's limit? Can they follow a 2-step instruction? Okay, if they can follow 2-step, then you're going to keep your instructions at 2 steps and then occasionally add a third, right? Because you want to work on that 3rd step. But for that 3rd step, you're going to put in place some additional support strategies. So maybe you're going to use a schedule for those 3 steps because your child struggles with that. But 2, they don't need it, right? Because they're good at it. So you're going to work on that until then 3 steps becomes really easy with the visual support, and you're going to remove that visual support so they can do the 3 steps without the visual. That's one example of how we might work through increasing a skill and capacity. So when you break down a skill, you're going to find at what level are they able to function, right? So what part of the routine can they complete? How much information can they process? Where is that level? You could even ask your child. I worked with a child the other day where I was like, where's your level? We were working on some anxiety related challenges, and I said, where's your level with getting close to this item that you're anxious about? And he was able to say, oh, my level is here, right? And I said, okay, go to your level. So he was able to move forward to his level, and then said, now take one more step. And we worked on taking one more step and doing some breathing to work through that anxiety, to become comfortable with that anxiety until things reduced a little bit. So we want to find where our children's level is. Where is that point that they have the capacity to cope or to manage? And then we want to go one step further with some support so that then they're learning to go a bit further than what they currently can do. All right, I want to emphasize using gestures and visuals as opposed to verbal prompts. So a verbal prompt is telling your child what to do. Put your shoes on, pull your socks up. It might be like put your fingers in there, pull it apart if they're trying to open a package. It could be literally telling them what to do. But I encourage you to reduce that verbal prompting because it's a type of prompt that we can become very reliant on. So it doesn't it's not the best way, I should say, it's not the best way to support independence. You might start off with verbal prompting. It's a higher level prompt. Then I want to encourage you to use gestures. So pointing, right? Doing like this, like kind of a what do you think? What's next? Maybe a this, like think about it. Okay. It might be pointing to the item that is linked to what they have to do. It might be pointing, for example, for hand washing. It's like pointing to the tap if you're trying to get your child to follow the next step of the process for hand washing. Instead of saying turn the tap on, I'm going to point to the tap. Use a gesture, right? So as much as possible, use gestures. This will help your child become more independent quicker than if you're constantly using verbal prompts. All right. If you are using verbal prompts, I encourage you to use indirect verbal prompts like, what do you think's next? Have a look at your environment. What's happening around you? What's going on, right? So help them to have give them other cues to help them to be independent in observing what's going on around them. All right. Getting started is often a really hard part of starting processes and routines and for our kids to do things independently. So help them to get started and then move back. I often say when we're prompting and we're supporting our children, we're like a wave. We come in, we give them some support, and we move back. And we use gestures and other different prompts to help them be independent. And then if they're getting stuck, we move in a little bit and we move back. So think of yourself like a wave moving in and back to prompt your child and help them through these processes and tasks. But help them get started first. That's often a real barrier. You can also pair the starting of something with something else that's positive. So for example, you play a song that you always play in the morning that is a cue for them to start to pack their bag, right? So that's getting started with the routine. You could use other things, a little alarm that they like a bird chirping or a particular sound that they like. That sound is a cue for them to start a routine or to do something within the process. That's a couple things you can do. And I also encourage you to be alongside your child to get that thing started, right? It's okay. If your child has ADHD or autism or other executive functioning challenges, they need that support initially, and then you're going to fade out. All right. Prepare your child for changes. So we talked about how with executive functioning, it's tricky to adjust to changes, to be flexible. And for a lot of kids with autism, inflexibility is a characteristic of their autism diagnosis. That doesn't mean they can never work on flexibility. It just means we have to build this skill. And so to build that skill, we are going to give more warnings. We're going to give countdowns. We're going to follow through with the transitions. We're going to look at how can we make the transition easier? How can we pair that with a positive? How can we make it, to a certain extent, fun and engaging initially, and then at some point we might fade that out, or they do it themselves. Maybe they have a little character that they hold and that they walk along with them, right? They walk through that process with their little Lego man their favorite Lego man goes and does that process with them. Maybe the Lego man joins them in getting ready for school. Maybe they join them in their routine for brushing their teeth and getting ready for bed. Maybe the Lego man adjusts to the changes with them. So you give them a change and the Lego man is there going through the change with them, talking to them, saying, That's okay, we can cope with this. I can do this. What are we going to do, Lego man? Let's do this. I remember we can practice this strategy. So they could be the one telling Lego man what to do in that process. So there are all these different ways we can help our kids to build the skills and capacity themselves. Also, I want you to keep in mind praising and reinforcement. So reinforcement increases the likelihood, when reinforcement is in place, it's increasing the likelihood of a skill occurring in the future. So reinforcement is a real key part of our kids' skills occurring in the future. Reinforcement doesn't necessarily mean just rewards. It also is linked to the outcome our kids get. So if our kids get the right outcome from doing something, that behavior has been reinforced. It might mean that we have to add contrived reinforcement initially to increase our kids' motivation and also increase the positive outcome our kids get from that particular event or skill or behavior. So know that contrived reinforcement, there's a time and a place for it. It can be faded out and transition to more naturally occurring reinforcement. And I talk a lot about this in my mini course that I've created, the Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap. I talk a lot about understanding reinforcement and how to use it to support our kids' skills, and then how to transition to our children being internally motivated and internally reinforced, having that pride and that pride, and what else? That achievement, that feeling of achievement, and how good that feels, right? So we want to transition to that eventually. But back to changes and transitions, we want to practice little things and praise our children and reinforce our children for coping. Pay more attention to the times when your child does cope with the change and transition than the times when they struggle. So I want you to put more emphasis on when they do cope as opposed to when they don't cope. And think about breaking it down again. We go back to breaking it down. How can you make that change and transition more easy for your child to cope with than just lumping it on them? All right. Model your thinking. So you as a parent, I want you to be modeling and talking out loud when you're going through things. So when you're going through your daily process of, getting things ready, maybe transitioning from one thing to the next, I want you to model this. So for example, you might be having breakfast, and at the breakfast table, you're speaking out loud and you're saying, after breakfast, I'm going to put the dishes in the dishwasher. I'm going to get my lunch, put it in my bag. I'm going to go to my bedroom and get my hat that I need for the day. Then I'm going to get my shoes, get the keys, and go in the car. Okay, so you're talking out loud the process that you have to go through to work on those skills, to go through that routine. And I want you to model that pride, right, throughout. You can be like, yes, I remembered to put the dishes in the dishwasher. Cool. What was next? Oh, I've got to pack my lunch in my lunch bag. This is great. I can do this. Okay, so that positive language, positive mindset models to our children that they can say that to themselves again. They can feel proud. They can feel motivated to do this on their own. Things like, I did it on my own. I didn't need any help. Yes, I can do this, right? That kind of language is important to model. When we talk about self-regulation, this is kind of like a whole other realm of things. I've been focusing a lot on routines and processing that kind of information when we talk about executive functioning. But self-regulation is a whole other realm of executive functioning that we need to build our children's capacity around. And I'm not going to delve into it too much, but what I want to highlight here is that when our kids are dysregulated, their capacity to use their prefrontal cortex is 0 is minimal or zero. And this is where we see dysregulation occurring, heightened behaviors, reactiveness, a lack of impulse control. So think about, how can you help your child get into a state of regulation? What can you help them to do? Maybe it's removing a bit of a demand and helping them to get back to baseline, to then build them up again so that they have that capacity. Do they need some sensory time to regulate themselves? Do they need some big bear hugs from you, some squishes, some reassurance that they're loved, that you're there for them? And then after that, what can you do to help them take that one step further and then re-engage in whatever they should be doing? So I want you to think about, I guess, when you are getting angry and frustrated with your child because they're not listening and following you, you take a break as well. I know it's hard when you've got a timeline, you've got to get to school at a certain time, or if you've got to get to work at a certain time. It might mean you make more time in your mornings, or you you create more time at some point if you need that. If you know that there's often these dysregulated moments, but when that occurs, taking a break, giving yourself a break, using other things that help to calm, such as I like massages. The vibration can be really regulating for a lot of kids. So thinking about using those, thinking about giving your child space, yourself space, using music, using other things like a face washer that's got a cool face washer, a warm face washer that your child can put on their face. Often cool helps really well because if we're dysregulated, we've often got more energy and heat running through our body, so that cooling effect is helpful. A block of ice, maybe like an ice cube, maybe that your child sucks on a small ice cube or something, that can help their regulation. There's lots of different inventive tools out there that you can look at. So think about your child being regulated, and if they're not, then yelling or putting more demands on them is just going to increase the stress level and decrease their capacity to do anything. So take space, take time, and reduce your verbal communication, right? When our kids are dysregulated, this can often trigger them more. So use gestures, use visuals, give them space, and maybe just do a little bit more for them in that moment. Now I'm getting to skill building. So it's not enough to just adjust our environment, to reduce the demands, to wait for our kids to get regulated before we work on these things. Often our children aren't having enough practice at the correct skill to increase their capacity. So our kids are they're trying things, they're failing. I call this the failure cycle. They try, they fail, someone gets annoyed at them, or they don't get the outcome they want. It doesn't work for them. They try, they fail again. There isn't often the opportunity for them to be successful. And there's not enough repetition of a skill for them to learn it, to embed it within their memory and their long-term memory. So then they forget next time, right? We've got kids who are very impulsive, and I'm sure as a parent you might have come across this situation where you're like, why did you do that again? I just told you to not do it, and then you just did it again, right? It's because they haven't had the opportunity to do it right multiple times and get a good outcome, reinforcement, a good outcome, the right outcome, get the reinforcement for that correct response or behavior multiple times, right? So we need to flip this failure cycle upside down and turn it into a success cycle. And that means setting up positive opportunities to practice a skill, to get it right, and to get a good outcome, a positive outcome from it. And for that to be happening over and over again. And this includes making it fun, making it interactive, not having that negative response like yelling or criticism from an adult that really is a barrier to their learning and growth. So we want to practice working memory skills. We want to practice games that involve following instructions in a fun and interactive way. It might be something like the game where you have five or a few less or a few more depending on your child's capacity, 5 items, different toys on the table. You cover them with a sheet and then you secretly remove 2 and then you take the sheet off and your child has to think about what the missing items are, right? So that's working on their memory, their working memory. You might then increase the number of items that you remove, or you put items in a particular order and then they have to think about and remember the order, recite it, you cover it up, and then you switch the order around and you see if they can put them back in the correct order. So there's different activities like this. What I will do is I will post on my page some executive functioning resources and activities that you can do with your child. Another good one is for your auditory memory, working memory, is the game I went on a holiday and I brought. So there's different versions of this game, but one example is we go around in a circle. It might be at the dinner table or just after school or on your camping trip. We say, so the first person starts and says, I went on a holiday and I brought a skipping rope or a jump rope. The next person says what I am bringing and one item that they're going to bring. And we keep building on that. So the next person will say, I went on a holiday and I bought a jump rope and a hat. Okay, and then the next person has to remember jump rope, hat, and then their own thing. So jump rope, hat, and a spoon. And then the next person has to remember jump rope, hat, spoon, and their thing, like the fourth thing. So then we go around in a circle and we keep going and going and going until someone forgets. And then we might help them to remember, and we keep going and we try to see what can we get to, what number of items can we remember in a row. That works on our working memory. All right. I've talked through a lot of things, so I'm going to probably finish there, and I'm going to summarize some of the key points I talked through today. So firstly, remember that your child is not intentionally trying to irritate you or upset you by forgetting what to do or not being able to process the information. Use visuals, lists, timers, apps. There's a great app called the Finch app, which is, I'll put the link in a Facebook post for you. It's an app where kids can earn little rewards and like stars and dress up a little finch bird as they tick off the things that they need to do in their routine or throughout their day. So it's a daily habit tracker for kids. So use resources like this. Use gestures, reduce your verbal prompting, use gestures to help your child be independent. What else do we have? Practice the skill. Figure out one routine or situation that your child struggles with. Think about how to break it down, and then think about where you're going to start. Remember where your child's current level is. Start there and then move forward up one level by giving them some support and prompting. And work on that until they get it, okay? And then you're going to work up the next level. So break the skill down, practice the skill, make it fun, try to incorporate positive teaching strategies within that, or positive environmental strategies to help your child function effectively. Reinforce, okay? Model the positive reinforcement you're giving yourself. So model that internal talk that you say to yourself to get ready and the internal praise you give yourself, and then give your child more reinforcement and praise for being successful than you currently are giving. Let's see. Don't just make accommodations. Keep in mind that accommodations are good temporarily, and then once our children have the skill, reduce their accommodations a little bit so they don't need to rely on these all the time. However, keep in mind that there are times when your child might always need some tool to help them get through a situation or a process. And what else? We want to make time. This is tricky, right? How do you make time to teach your child? This means you need to take a look at your own calendar. You need to block out some time so that you can set up opportunities to practice with your child to make it positive. Think about where you can embed it within your routine, pair it with something else within your routine. Maybe it means getting up a little bit earlier. Maybe it means not doing the dishes straight after dinner, leaving it to once your kid's in bed or the next morning. Maybe it's adjusting something within the routine. Perhaps you tag team, if you have your partner and you tag team together and one of you is cooking dinner while the other is doing some work with your child. So think about how you can adjust your schedule to make time. It's not easy to incorporate something else when we have busy schedules and busy lives. So I want you to think about, what are you already doing? How can you embed these teaching strategies within your current routine? How do you make time? Okay? And that might mean pushing something else that's less important aside temporarily. Okay. I'm going to finish there. I'm going to leave some important books. Oh, I'm not going to finish there. I'm going to quickly show you a couple books I love. I have this Smart But Scattered book. It's got lots of information in it. It's for our kids who are super clever, but are a bit all over the place, right? Maybe that's you. Sometimes I feel like it's me sometimes. And then I've got Executive Functioning Skills in Children and Adolescents. So this is a really good, if you like these kind of books where it tells you, there's a lot of text in there. So it's very much a guide where it tells you specific lesson plans. Even if you're not a teacher, it's good for practical skills at home, how to teach something, how to work on skills, how to understand your child and help them reach their full potential. That's what we're here for. Our kids have so much potential, so much incredible capacity and incredible knowledge and experience to learn and to share with us, right? We want to be able to empower them to share that and help them reach their full potential to be independent and to contribute to our society in the best way they can. I'm going to leave it there. Feel free to reach out to me if you are interested in any of my online course information, my online resources. I do have a school community that I'm getting up and running. It's in a very early phase, but I will be having a resource hub on there for children, for parents who have a child with autism or ADHD or other neurodiverse conditions that make it hard for our kids to cope. And this is a place for you to connect with others. It's a place for you to find resources. And soon I will be hosting these live chats on that platform. That's all for me for now. I will see you in another 2 weeks, and I wish you the very best. Enjoy your day, your evening, whatever time it is, and support your child to reach their full potential. Bye for now.